Hi and hello to all you popcorn talkers, and welcome to another episode of Second Way to Kill a Werewolf. My name is Damien, and with me as always is my co-host, Matthias, Mr. Rodriguez. Matthias, how you doing today, man?
These are getting better every time we do this, Damien. Fantastic. Doing good. Yeah. Overall good. There was a very emotional World Cup match between Argentina and Cabo Verde that I just watched, where we very almost narrowly lost. So it's been that type of day today, but that's how sports are.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me. I'm still bitter over the Spurs-Knicks loss, but it is what it is. And then just to add insult to injury, I hear about Ben Stiller is coming out with a documentary following all of this. I'm like, great, we get to relive this all over again. I can understand why there's the appeal. Obviously, I think the last time they won a championship was like 53 years ago or something like that. So, and it's the Knicks, so there you go. I don't know. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, so you said that you've been watching, obviously, the World Cup. Argentina won. When did they play?
They played today at like 5.
Oh, really? Oh, today.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought there weren't. I don't know. Believe it or not, and this is part of the what we've been watching segment. I've been watching a little bit of the World Cup there lately. Believe it or not, I've actually watched I've watched more soccer in the past week than I've watched in my entire life, if you can believe it. And I don't know. I got to say, I think I'm a fan. I still need to learn the rules a lot more in terms of like really knowing like, okay, wait, why is he shooting a penalty? Because like in basketball, it's pretty easy. You get a foul, you get a free throw. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In soccer, it's a little, especially because I have no previous experience whatsoever. So it's a little more difficult for me to understand in a way what's going on. But I'm following it enough to really get that sensation, that excitement when I'm like, oh, wow, they're getting towards the goal. And, you can see them trying to make it. And then, the goal comes out, which is cool. I like it. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's been fun. And I have to say, I think I'm a new found soccer fan, dare I say it. But yeah, just thought I'd share that little bit of news with you, man.
Well, let's get you a jersey then.
All right, then. You know what? I have been going. Okay, so obviously, not obviously, but for me, Mexico and U.S. And especially like my wife is from Mexico, as you know. So there's that appeal as well. And Mexico was the first team that I started like following. I can honestly say it's like, hey, do you remember your first anime that you watched? Yes, I do. I remember the first anime that I watched. Death Note was the first one, and I kind of feel like Mexico is in that category right now. It's like, do you remember the first soccer team that you cheered for? I have to say, I think it was Mexico, because that was the first full-length soccer game that I ever actually sat down and watched. And then I watched the next game, and I'm excited to watch the following game, which this is being recorded before that, but when they play England, which I'm actually excited for. I mean, I'm excited for a soccer game. I never thought I would ever say that. But it's cool. I think it's really cool. It's an exciting sport. I can see the appeal now. Maybe just getting exposed to it a little bit more helps. But then there's also the U.S., because, hey, I want to represent my country as well. I like them also. So I'm going for both. I'm not really dedicated to one per se. I really have to say I'm split 50-50. But I feel like Mexico is kind of the underdog in a way right now, viewed in a lot of ways. And I don't know why I just automatically assumed that at one point or another that they had won a World Cup, and apparently they haven't. Just recently they surpassed they were able to break a 46-year curse or 40-something year curse that they never made it past the first elimination round. So that was cool learning about that. So I want to go for Mexico because I want to see them win, because the underdog. But I'm also going for the U.S. because got to represent my country as well. So to answer your question, both. I would say, what about you? But I'm pretty sure.
And just like that, this is now a football podcast.
Yeah, no, right.
No.
Oh, go on, go on. You were gonna say?
It's like no. It's like we can't do that because not this podcast would be way too long if we
Yeah,
were doing
and
that.
then
'Cause,
I just admitted to not knowing anything about it, so I don't think it would be a very good
yeah,
podcast if
very
I'm
one
being honest.
sided.
But you know what? We do know about movies, folks. So, after that long winded little introduction and discussion, if this is your first time joining us, let me tell you a little bit about what to expect. No, we are not a soccer podcast, a football podcast. We are a podcast dedicated to covering all things pop culture and movies, TV shows, and pretty much anything that's streaming that grabs our attention. Throughout the show, we'll bring up some topics, lend our voices to opinions, and hopefully that will lead to engaging with you all in the future on our social media platform on Instagram and TikTok at Second Way to Kill a Werewolf, where we encourage you to post any comments or questions that you may have about the show. Also, if you happen to be listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, hit like and subscribe. And on Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review and drop us a comment about the episode while you're at it. We want to hear the voices of the Second Way listeners. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and jump right into kind of, I guess, a continuation of what we were just discussing, minus the soccer. But what we've been watching, I like to kick off these episodes just to kind of, decompress a little bit and just be like, hey, you know what have you been watching that's just been kind of your go-to for the week or so? Was it a movie? Was it a series? Did you revisit something? Is it something new? Did you go to the theaters? Stuff like that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and lead off and say that I've been kind of doing this time machine travel thing lately. No, I haven't been watching Doctor Who. Never seen a single episode of Doctor Who. But by that, I mean, I'm revisiting old shows. I find myself revisiting old series that I really enjoyed back then and kind of going back and just revisiting them really. Like I started with, I would say, Game of Thrones at one point. I finished that. And then I moved on to Sons of Anarchy. I finished that. Both shows still hold up. Sons of Anarchy, mwah, chef's kiss. What can I say? One of my favorite shows, actually my favorite show of all time. And then now I started going back to watch Vikings, which if you haven't seen Vikings, and if you're the type of person that enjoys that type of historical representation in terms of Viking culture and things like that, and just their expeditions and exploring, and then obviously the fighting, the violence, and all of that stuff. It's all there. I mean, this show has it all: romance, fighting, everything else that I can't name off the top of my head because my memory sucks, but it has it if you can think of it. And let's see what else was there. Vikings. It still holds up. I'm on season 5 right now, and it's such a great show. The characters are very just very rich with expression, I guess, and they're very, very well developed characters, I would say, especially obviously the main one, Ragnar Lothbrok, who is you see where he started and then where he's kind of going, and you see that transition of characters, so that it's important to see that. And I've said this before on the show, where you want to see a character that is going to go on a journey, not just start one way and end the exact same way. You can end the same situation, I guess, but your character has to go through a growth phase, and that they do that very, very well with this character, and they make it make sense. It's not just like, I think South Park said it in terms of the South Park creator said it in terms of story development. They said you can't just have something like good script writing and storytelling isn't that this happens, then this happens, then this happens. It's this happens, which leads to this happening, that eventually leads to this happening because this is happening. It can't just be a series of events that make no that don't help to move the narrative or push the story forward. Mm-hmm. And with him, yes, you find himself in some like crazy situations, but it's also well defined, and there's reason behind it, not just he's gonna do it. So yeah, I've been revisiting that. And recently, I also started dipping my toe in The Strain. Did you ever watch that one, Matthias, The Strain?
It was on FX, right?
Yes.
Like a long time ago, back in the cable days.
Yeah, seriously, though.
I think I caught like 1 or 2 episodes, and I just couldn't get really into it. I don't know what it is, because I mean, it's up there with what I like. It's like it's got like sort of like the vampire tones. I think, did Guillermo del Toro produce or create this? I forget.
Yes, it was him as well as another because it was an original, I wanna say a novel that was a pairing of the 2, Guillermo del Toro and another writer, which I feel bad for not remembering, and it's a very well-known writer too. I wanna say Chuck no, it wouldn't be Chuck Palahniuk, the writer of the movie with, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton that I can't think of right now.
Fight Club?
Yeah, Fight Club. Uh, it's not I don't think it's him, unless it might be him, I don't know. But in any case, I think it still holds up. It's definitely a series that I find myself hitting next, 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 and I'm just like, yeah, this is the show. Some of the acting, and some of the line deliveries are not maybe as well, and I don't remember them being this way. Not that I ended watching that show the first time and was like, wow, I'm blown away. The script is amazing. The story, you watch it because it's a bunch of vampire stuff, and I'm not going to say no to that. But it's very, very entertaining enough for me to go back and want to revisit the series as a whole. So there you go. But that's a cap off on what I've been watching. What about you, Matthias? What have you been? What's been grabbing your attention lately?
So for me, one of my little guilty pleasures, I guess, of what I like in terms of programming, I like shows about traveling.
Okay.
Now, I don't like shows necessarily that are like, "Hey, you should go to this place and, see all the stuff that everybody else has seen or that you can access online and see, countless, different variations of or like people that already take, I like
Mhm.
shows that kind of focus about more of like the cultural significance and history as well as, taking a walk off the beaten path. So what I've been watching lately, because I remember a long time ago I used to watch it quite regularly when it was on cable, but, I'm rewatching a lot of, Anthony Bourdain's, No Reservations,
Nice. Yeah.
episodes. So, like, the old ones that started, like, in, like, the early 2000s. And,
Mhm.
man, just to see the way that sort of, like, television and that type of programming has evolved over the years, it's just kinda interesting to see because No Reservations definitely had that kind of, like, gritty, off the cuff kind of feel to it, where I
Mhm.
feel like nowadays it's more of a focus of trying to kind of commercialize a place and kind of really trying to get its best light. Whereas with Anthony Bourdain, considering his background and how he is as like a chef, and also him dealing with his own personal demons, with substance abuse and with like depression, he
Yeah.
very much goes into like the soul of a place and doesn't stray away from like talking about not just the good, unknown parts of it and like his other show, parts unknown, but also like sort of expressing a lot of like the elements of a place that can be seen as seedy or seen as a little bit kind of like probably scary to like the average person, but with the context that he gives about it and the sort of way that he kind of like paints it in a different light, it gives you an idea of like traveling. Yes, it's supposed to be about broadening your horizons and kind of like looking into a place from just an outside perspective, but to give it a little bit of respect and to kind of also see it in a way to where if you lived here, if you were a resident of this place and all stuff, like you would find what you might find as sort of odd or out of place. To them, it's just the day to day, and there's something to celebrate in that. And there's something about kind of keeping those secrets of a place intact so that people can still appreciate, like just the little things about it instead of having to be so commercialized or so accessible, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, I've been watching a lot of those lately. And honestly, I'm just like, man, it's like, not only do I sort of like really, really want to go to these places and all that stuff, especially like as I get older, I'm kind of like, man, I should travel more. But
Yeah.
it also makes me miss Anthony Bourdain. I just feel like his perspective on things was just one of a kind.
Yeah, he was an avid, jujitsu enthusiast in his later years as well, if I'm
Mhm.
not mistaken, which was really impressive because it was inspiring as well because it wasn't something that he had just picked or that he had been doing his whole life and just, had it committed to memory. It was something that he dedicated himself to in his later years. I don't know how old he was before he passed, but jujitsu was something that he had practiced. I would say this is just a shot in the dark. Maybe the last 5 years of his life, maybe even
Mhm.
less, which is impressive to be at an older age and still take on something new. It's actually really inspiring, I find. So that was always something I remember about him. The show I never really watched No Reservations. I caught a few episodes here and there. The one that I followed mostly was that Bizarre Foods, which that
Oh
series.
yeah, yeah, with Andrew Zimmern. Yeah, I watched those too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was always fun, and that's another series much like that that I can go back and revisit. And I attribute a lot of my cooking, uh I don't know, love of cooking and grilling and all that stuff. A lot of it happened from like the Food Network, and just seeing all that and the different celebrities that came out in those shows. Like they all had their run. Yeah, like I remember when Chopped was this huge thing.
Hmm.
uh, Now it's like they're on, I don't know, the spin-off version of like of the fifth spin-off version of that show
Yeah.
already. So um it's just part of it. I attribute to, like you said, back in the old days, like cable and whatnot. And yes, it was still around for streaming and it was really cool, but it was still kind of in that transition phase. And now it's like we're, for the most part, fully transitioned into the social media aspect of it, where you've got people that are doing their own thing on YouTube, like for cooking, or like ourselves, like as we've put this show out, and we've had, like, maybe this is going to be now the third episode that we put on YouTube. It's pretty, and it's pretty impressive, or it's not impressive, but I mean it's pretty cool, I should say, to see something that you create on YouTube, and I didn't have to go through, I don't know, like contracts and all of this stuff and everything, and sign this form and do this and meet with this person. And it's just, there's so much power given to creators now, that to take it the rest of the way is really up to you, if you're willing to work towards it. But if you're not, then of course, you're not going to post anything. So it's kind of refreshing to see that it's basically there. The opportunity is there if you want to take it, versus all of this like red tape that you'd have to go through back in the day. I mean, how would you even get a show like ours to the mass amounts of people that it is? Like, you do, it reminds me of Wayne's World, like you'd have to go to a studio and find a channel, public cable access and all that stuff. And here, do it right from our house, and bam, just there for tens of people, hopefully, that will eventually watch this show. I was gonna say the millions of other people that are watching other shows, but there's a chance they could turn on ours. So if you are new to the show and you're listening to this, be sure to give us a thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button, uh, because things I thought I'd never say for 500, Trebek, hit that subscribe button, and hit like, or give us a thumbs up. But yeah, so that's gonna wrap up what we've been watching. I like I said, I always find it refreshing to kind of discuss that going in and opening up, just because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we are. We're a show that talks about anything, basically, like it says in the intro, anything that's streaming that grabs our attention. And sometimes what grabs our attention is series that we watched, I don't know, yesteryear, but we bring back up because maybe you were the same way and you were like, you know what? I'm going to revisit that myself. So hopefully we made your next doom scroll a little bit easier. But that said, in terms of the movie news and the popcorn talk, we've got some pretty cool stuff to talk about. And the first topic that we're going to bring up is a story that it definitely got my attention, especially with what's going on in the category of horror right now. And this story is coming with a little movie called The Blair Witch Project, which I think, like, nearly after 3 decades or so, we're going to be reintroduced to this in a completely different take, which is pretty cool, but at the same time, a little like, haven't we kind of been down this road before? Even back in the time when it was big, when they did the Blair Witch Part 2, and then the Blair Witch, I think, that got released in like 2017 or something along those lines. Neither of which did nearly the amount of success that the first one did. And the reason that the first one did so well, is the kind of reason that I'm wondering, how are you going to do this now? Because one of the big reasons that the Blair Witch, the first one that came out, did amazing, or did so great, was because you didn't know. Like, it was like, is this real? It was, I believe it was the first found footage movie. It launched a whole new genre of horror movies. in the later years with movies like Wreck, Quarantine. Then there was the Cloverfield. Found footage became a huge thing because of Blair Witch Project. And not only was the Blair Witch Found Footage Project introduced when it first came out, you also didn't know, was this true or not? Because we didn't have access to social media. Our things was like Ask Jeeves, at that point, and he didn't tell us nothing. Let me tell you that right now. Like hell, I don't even think Google was a thing. If I had to really think about it, Yahoo, I guess. But it makes me wonder: is this a good idea? Do they have a really good idea? Are they going to try to reintroduce that element of, is this real? Is it fake? I kind of feel like you can't do that nowadays. But I don't know. What's your take on this, Matthias, when you heard this news?
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing that sort of made the Blair Witch Project like something so captivating, was the fact that you didn't know if it was real or not. I kind of attribute the same way, sort of like how the story of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like, for a while,
Yes.
it was actually seen as something like, oh, that actually happened and all that stuff there. And for the longest time, I thought the same thing here, because the Blair Witch is kind of more or less from like my generation, where I was like, okay, like this happened, right? Like this is an urban legend that, is happening. So if I go to this
Yes.
place, I'm gonna, be forced to stand in the corner as well too, or look at the wall. But to try to capture that in the year of our Lord 2026, well, I think this was slated for 2027. I just don't know how you can do that really, because a lot of it was like, yeah, that uncertainty of it, of everything being so separated and it being sort of kind of like a spooky story that you tell. Whereas, a lot of those stories in this day and age, that's a dime a dozen. It's like I can go on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok and be like, oh, okay, here's a story about this happening. Oh, someone made this up or whatever. It's like I can find so many of those stories. And yeah, I think it's going to lose a lot of that, I feel. But one thing that I researched into this, as far as who was going to be helming this, there's a YouTuber, and as we kind of have seen recently, YouTubers are kind of hot right now for Hollywood. Dylan Clark, who I don't know if you ever seen his short horror films like Storytime and Portrait of God, but they're really good.
I haven't. So just out of curiosity, how long is that film or feature, I guess?
They're like 10, 15 minutes. Like they're not long at all.
Okay.
Like these are like very short order type of horror projects and all that stuff. So you can watch a couple in an evening and you can feel satisfied. But a lot of what I've seen, especially with Portrait of God, which has a lot of sort of like that cosmic horror element to it, are really super well done. So that does give me hope in terms of like this being directed in a way that kind of makes it very fresh and very personal. It's just how do all those other factors play into it as well too with this, because the screenwriter for this is going to be Chris Thomas Devlin, who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre for Netflix back in 2022, and then the movie Cobweb in 2023, which the Texas Chainsaw movie for Netflix was okay. They were kind of doing the same thing too, where they kind of wanted to sort of modernize it a little bit there. And they did kind of take the whole aspect of what was popular back then, which is like, influencers going to these small towns or going to check out like these, these local horror stories or whatever. And they kind of just trying to make sense of it and trying to kind of like take it online, so to speak. So I can see with that pairing between the two, that I think that's going to be a focus of it, to where it's going to be like, oh, maybe the story focuses on an influencer or a content creator that goes out and tries to sort of like recapture that element that made the 1999 film so special. So that's one way I think they can push it, I think. I don't know if you had any ideas.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I didn't realize Cobweb was also included in that. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, I thought, it's one that I still put on every now and again. It's still an entertaining film. Is it the best of the series? Probably not. But there's some pretty good entries in that series. Of course, the original that started it all, And then for me, the very first one that I ever saw actually was the one that came out probably in the early 2000s with Jessica Biel, which that one was a film that was able to, I feel, reestablish that element of horror,
Hmm.
and fear, and just that raw grittiness that the original gave. Of course, the original is the original, and it was done in the 70s, which is that type of era for those types of films, very raw type of footage, similar to I believe like the film I Spit on Your Grave, which was the original in the 1970s as well. There was just that style that this fell into. But the 2000s was able to take that and then kind of keep carrying that torch. Then, of course, they made some other versions of that film as well in the later years. But then, of course, the one that you mentioned, which was written by the screenplay by Chris Thomas, Devlin, it wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. Uh, it was okay. It was like some of the characters were a little like, I don't know, but ultimately, it's still a movie that I'll turn on randomly here and there. It's still a pretty good film. So taking that and Cobweb, I didn't really like. I think Cobweb was one of those movies that I kind of just was interested in because it was at a time when we were not getting very many films out. I believe it was still during the getting Hollywood back up and running after like the strikes, the quarantine, et cetera, et cetera. And we weren't getting very many things to watch at that time. There was that movie, I think Imaginary was another one that came out that I was just like, oh, it's new. All right, watch, buy, purchased, here we go. And Cobweb was kind of another one of those as well, which it was okay, I guess. Both of those films, I don't really remember that clearly. So I guess that kind of tells you something. But but yeah, between those two, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, I kind of liked that one. It had its moments. I liked the moment, especially when you had Leatherface in the bus with the influencers that were there, and it was just like, I'm canceling you, man. It was just like, oh yeah, cancel this. And for those of you that don't know, he proceeded to wield his chainsaw and go. So in my best sound effect,
Perfect.
that's what that was. Thank you. I nailed it. I know. I really need a sound effects board. Um, but yeah, so the Blair Witch, I think that's a good idea that you had as far as the influencer route. I feel like that's something that relates to this day and age. That there might still be able to be that. Is this real? Is it not? In a sense, maybe not fully like the way it was back then, but maybe I don't know, break the fourth wall. No, maybe not break the fourth wall. I don't know. To be honest, I'm just like the fact that they're bringing the original, I think, actors and the original creative team as well to this is something to be said because it could be one or two things. Either they really do want their input on things, or they're just kind of putting their name to this film to kind of get that nostalgia and that,
Hmm.
hey, guess what? This is going to be a part of it now too. These so and so is going to be a part of it, and maybe it just adds to the marketing, part of it. I don't know. There's a couple of different ways that they could go about it, but as I understand it, this reboot is going to be backed by Lionsgate alongside with a partnership of Blumhouse Productions and Atomic Monsters. So the additional producers are going to be Jason Blum, James Wan, Roy Lee, Adam Hendricks, and Greg Gilreath. So it's going to be a big swing to revive a huge influential franchise, really, and bring it and introduce it to a new generation. It's just, is this generation interested in something like that? Hell, is even the generation that inspired or that was of that era of that time, are they even interested in this? But we are going to find out by next year because this movie is going to be coming out next year. We're in 2026, folks, and this movie is coming out September 24th, 2027. And this is going to be a full reboot. This isn't going to be a sequel. This isn't going to be a prequel. Um, it has my interest at the very least. And the other thing, actually, you know what? I was about to kind of close that topic out, but before I do, here's the thing. Here's another thing that this movie really pioneered in. We understand that in horror, and comedy, but for the sake of this conversation, we're concentrating on horror. You go low. You want to, how do I say? Typically, the budgets are lower for movies associated with horror. It's a that niche genre really. And the budgets that are associated with this usually come in fairly low. And if you have a hit on your hands, I mean, that's the margin of profit is that much higher because of the fact that your budget was so low, including marketing and everything. So we're seeing that kind of come to terms again, typically with movies like Evil Dead Rise when that one came out, and most recently, of course, Obsession, which I believe had a $750,000 budget
Mm-hmm.
and pulled in, I want to say like somewhere upwards of around 300 million or so. Impressive. I mean, amazing, really. 750,000, and then you made that much more money on it, 300 million. I mean, geez, that's crazy. You want to hear something crazier? 1999 was the original was the year that Blair Witch came out. I don't know if you know this in your research or if you had a chance. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. I'll tell you. But take a guess at how much the budget was for the Blair Witch 1999.
I saw two figures. One of them I saw was, and this is like before post-production editing and marketing, I think was like about $35 to $60,000 or something like that. I know it was like a super low, like it was like, hey, that's the price of like a new car, sort of, in this year.
Basically, seriously, I mean, $60,000 was that budget on this film, and it brought in approximately $250 million. So
That's
again,
crazy.
Obsession, impressive, especially this day and age because you're competing with so many different things, as we've established, which is why I don't really go with the whole adjust for inflation type of deal because the same variables weren't present. Like, I guess you could adjust for inflation for movies that were like maybe 2 or 3 years ago if you want to do that, but or within the era. But if you're talking about a movie that came out in 1999, people went to go see those movies in 1999 because there wasn't streaming. There weren't as many other competitive factors involved nowadays. So, or back then. So for it to have a budget of 60,000 and pull in that much is the ROI is just crazy. The return on investment there. It doesn't take away from the impressiveness of Obsession, but I mean 60,000 versus 750,000. Here's the thing with that. Found footage and a great idea and amazing marketing is what really took this movie and just took it to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Can that be repeated now? Are they going to have that type of niche behind them to be able to carry in? Because I'm very, very curious to see what the first marketing is going to be like for this film. Is it going to be something that is going to be found footage again? Or is it going to be something that just, I don't know, is just a regular, follow the character type of movie as opposed to the found footage? Because I feel like if you're going to do a complete reboot, you have to go back to that. You can't have a story that's just following characters in the traditional movie, type of scene. You have to have that found footage. Or maybe you do a combination of both. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe you do 80-20. Maybe it's 80% found footage, 20%, or vice versa. I don't know. What's your opinion on that, Matthias?
Yeah, I think the strength of this is going to be in the marketing campaign and in how it's going to be presented. My thing is that you have to, of course, give it an element to where it's very believable and it feels very grounded to like how we view media, as of now, which, a lot of people are watching it on their phones. So you need to sort of garner that sense of whatever they present this in or how they're going to market this film. It has to be something that you would probably come across like on TikTok or an Instagram or whatever. It's like, maybe that's what they can do. They can start just sort of like throwing out like small reels or small clips, and don't even like, really present them in any sort of way to where it seems like this is like movie marketing. Like just kind of make it just like a random thing. Like, hey, somebody posted this whole thing. It's like a shot of the forest or this weird figurine or whatever, in some sort of cabin. Like go back to that sort of thing to where there's just no explanation or context. Like it's just an image or just a short video, and that's all you do.
Mm.
And people through the power of imagination, all that stuff, start crafting their theories, start kind of thinking themselves, okay, what could this mean? What is this about? Da, 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 da. I think that's how you go with this. Because trying
Yeah,
to
because
kind of, because I think going for like, okay, this is just a straight up movie. I don't think anybody's gonna buy into that. I feel.
yeah, I think the scariest thing, as we've said before, most often is the thing that you don't see that is the most frightening. Um, I don't know. I'm curious to see if they can pull this one off and if they can revive this. And if they do well, does it merit a second one? And also, how do they define well nowadays? Because like I said, we just talked about their success, which was 60,000 and then brought in 250 million. What are they going to use? What's going to be the benchmark now for success? And also, I'm very curious to see what their budget is, especially if they go with the found footage. Because if they go the 100% found footage route and the budget is like $2 million, I'm like, dang, what else is added to this? That was going to add a budget of 2 million versus say 60,000. I don't know. It's tough to say, but it wouldn't be the first movie that has a low budget that comes in and brings in quite a bit. Another one would be Smile, and that got a sequel. And then, of course, there's Terrifier, which, again, started off with a very modest budget. But by the time they did part 2 or part 3, I think it increased to, I think, maybe $2 million budget. And you saw it. You saw where pretty much almost every dollar was probably spent. So I guess that just has to say, if you have an original idea, then and it hits, then you're great. Something similar to Obsession, which I do plan on checking out this weekend. So finally, I've heard good things about it. So I'm very excited to see that one. So the Blair Witch is down. We're going to go ahead and talk about a new topic here. And the new topic is going to be circling around Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, who I thought was retired. And then we got Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and Sonic 3. Not that I'm complaining. I don't really want this guy to retire. He's a big part of my childhood as well, growing up watching movies like Ace Ventura and Ace Ventura Part 2 and I can't think of any more on the spot now. The Mask is another one. Yeah, there's a Cable Guy, Dumb and Dumber. He's done so many. And he's also shown that he can do it all. He can do comedy, he can do drama, maybe not horror with 23, but sort of horror. This guy can do it all. So I was very surprised to see that of all the movies that he's picking to move towards, because he's at that point in his career where he's probably just being very, very careful with what he wants to proceed and move with. I was very surprised to hear that he's going to be doing a Grinch sequel. And from what I gather, it's not going to be a CGI Grinch. It's going to be a live action, not motion capture. Well, okay, take that back. That part hasn't been confirmed on whether or not it's not going to be motion captured. But from what I gather, he's going to go the old makeup and effects with this. It's going to be practical effects to recapture that tone, that feel from the original movie that came out, I don't know, I think like 2000 or so. And it was actually a Ron Howard film, if I'm not mistaken. Man, time just goes by so fast. It's insane. I mean, hell, even though the animated version that came out was in 2018. I mean, that's going on 10 years practically being there. So a 2000 film, 26 years. And now we've got Jim Carrey, who, from what I always heard, was not very adamant about wanting to do a follow-up, specifically because of the fact of the makeup. And it wasn't a very comfortable experience. And as we've all heard from actors like Colin Farrell and I don't know, I can't think of somebody else I think we talked about in the last episode as well, to sit in a chair for 5 or 6 hours. I know it sounds like to me or you that we work our, regular jobs and get paid our regular wages, and these guys are making, I don't know, $5 million, or whatever it is, or more for just sitting on the chair. It sounds like Cry Me a River. And I'm going to say Cry Me a River because anybody in their right mind, they would say like, hey, we're going to give you $5 million. You just need to sit in this chair for 5 hours a day for at least 3 months. Yes. Okay. $5 million. You got it. I'm there. But it's also one of those things though, until you walk a mile in their shoes, it's tough. and I'm also claustrophobic. So the idea of a holiday movie with Santa Claus involved just scares me. I'm just kidding. Not that kind of claustrophobic. But no, the claustrophobic because yeah, the makeup is very suffocating, like it's heavy applications and I don't know if I could do it. I mean, I don't know. $5 million, I'd love to overcome that fear or that, feeling of discomfort, but it really makes me wonder how much money they're offering Jim Carrey for him to sit right back in that chair again and put himself through it. So I don't know. What's your opinion on this, Matthias? Is this something that interests you? Did you grow up like watching The Grinch? For me, it wasn't. It used to be an annual watch, and then I fell off of it, and then I just recently revisited it again, like maybe the past couple years, and now it's kind of back to being a regular watch for me. Uh, I love that movie. It's a good film. They did a really good job creating that world. But what's your take on this? Number one, does this have your curiosity or interest? And number two, did you grow up watching this one as well?
So sorry, I was thinking of something different. I started laughing for a reason. For this one, I think overall, I think it's a good. I was about to say horror movie. I mean, it could be seen as that, but
It
I think
was.
it's a good
They did
Christmas.
a remake.
Yeah, it's a good Christmas movie. I like it. I don't think it ever fell off my radar ever from watching it as a little kid to now. I think for me, it's always like that's quintessential to me.
Mhm.
Now, does it warrant a follow up? I think that should have happened a long time ago. I
Mm,
think kind of having it now, I just don't know what kind of direction they would go with it. I mean, obviously, it's like it has to take place, years after, and it has to have some sort of story relating to that. Like, what's the evolution of his character from that point on? It's like I doubt
true.
he goes back to hating Christmas again. I don't know if that's an angle they want to go with, but as far as like how I feel just as a whole with this, I mean, I think there's something there. You have to think that from the year 2000 to now, there's been major advancements with makeup and doing all that sort of thing as well too. So I think they found ways to maybe streamline the process a little bit, maybe make the suit that back in the day was made from like actual yak hair, which is really itchy, to something a little bit better for him to wear and probably not as heavy.
Mm.
So the elements for him to be a little bit more comfortable in stepping back into this role, I think, are there in some sort of way. I'm pretty sure that's one facet as to why he's probably coming back. I think the other one is they probably showed up with like 3 trucks full of money to his house and said,
Yep.
"Hey, this is happening. Do you want these 3 trucks of money?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Great.
So I think it's those little things that kind of are going with it. You do have also, Ron Howard's coming back to direct, and Brian Grazer's coming back also to produce as well too. So you have that element of the original people are signing on this, and then maybe they have something to kind of go off of that. But all this to say, I think I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a chance.
I think it'll be a good holiday film. I mean, with them just announcing it and still kind of getting all the details sorted out, I would probably venture to guess the earliest we would probably see this would be holiday, maybe November-ish, 2028 is
Yeah,
what I would guess. Which that would be great. I think I always appreciate a good holiday film, especially when you go and do a sequel for something like this, because then you can immediately make an evening of it and watch the first one and then watch the second one. That's something that I like to do, especially when new seasons come out of a series that I like. I like to go back and rewatch the older seasons. But as far as story, yeah, I don't know where they go with this. I mean, I'm not the writer for this, so I mean, it's not like I'm tasked with that job, but even off the cuff, I can't really think of where they go in terms of like furthering his story, unless I don't know, maybe he has a kid now and
I'm pretty
hates
sure. Yeah, that has to be something.
Christmas. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I mean, because I mean, okay, you can kind of look at it this way. You had Happy Gilmore Part 2 that came out, and he is poor again. Because that was one thing that I was wondering, like, okay, well, he was rich, successful golfer, and then all of a sudden, oh, they found a way for him to lose all his money and lose everything and start right back on square one again. And it worked for the film, more or less. So I don't know what you do with the Grinch. Do you have him go back? Does something happen in that time frame that just has him go back to hating Christmas again? But then you have the same redemption arc in some way, shape, or form. And do you bring back Cindy Lou Who, who's now, she had her band and everything going, and I think when she was, I don't know how old she was at the time. Maybe she was like 9 years old at the time of that. So I think she's probably in her mid to late 20s, if not early 30s, maybe. I don't know. Um, Molly Shannon was also in that. So yeah, they actually had quite a bit of well-known cast members that are in there. So I'm wondering who is all going to be coming back. But that said, if you're going to go for something like this, you have to get everybody, including the actress who played little Cindy Lou Who. I feel like if you're going to bank on the nostalgia, I'm not going to say that Jim Carrey isn't enough, but you want to make sure that you're crossing all the T's and dotting all the lowercase J's on this. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I don't know. I guess we'll see where that's going to end up. Budget on that was 123 million in that time frame, and worldwide box office was 345 million. So, it was successful. It wasn't like a major, huge, amazing 500 million or higher type of deal, but it did well enough to. I don't think it's that it did well enough to merit a sequel, and that this probably answers your question maybe as to why they didn't do it earlier. Although it still would make sense that they did it earlier, but I feel like they're banking on the potential cult following that this has,
Yeah.
in a way. It hasn't died yet. People are still talking about it. So with Jim Carrey off of his success with the Sonic films, he's the key. I mean, for sure, you don't move this forward without him. You don't get another actor to replace him, obviously. But even that, you still have to get him to get back into the suit. As great as he is, he needs to go back into the suit. The only compromise I could think of is if they, like, I don't know, CGI his face or something, or motion capture his face, I guess, alone, and the bodysuit is itself. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I could think of if they work it out. But even then, you've got to go all in. Either way, I'm curious, and I'll probably check it out when it comes out. So that's going to bring us to our next story here, and it's going to be back into the realm of AI, because Google and A24 of all studios they are working together right now in a partnership to develop an AI powered filmmaking tool, specifically Google Gemini. And the first thing that they're basically wanting to share with everyone is that this isn't, like I've said before, this isn't a takeover. It's a tool for use. Things like storyboarding, set development, things like that. All the stuff that happens, before you're ready to start, before cameras are ready to roll, type of deal. So at the end of the day, it's something that's going to make their lives easier. But for storyboarding, like we discussed before with the Martin Scorsese story, where he was kind of doing the same thing, does this get the ball rolling with putting a few more people out of work? I don't know. What do you think with these?
Yeah. So, I mean, like many other people on the internet, I was really surprised to hear this in terms of like, I didn't think A24 would be a studio that would kind of like bite down on something like this, with sort of
Yeah.
allowing AI, considering, they're known for their focus on like, the art house feel of filmmaking and kind of taking that old, Hollywood route and stuff like that of like giving small directors like these sort of really big chances and really big budgets to kind of create a story that's super unique and new. But as all things, and as we always talk about on this show, we are noticing that AI is taking a much bigger role in the role of filmmaking. We are seeing it sort of become a focus now, and a focus it is. I mean, Google's investing 75 million into this partnership and trying to see what they can do with that, and a lot of it is about streamlining the process of storyboarding, which I unfortunately, don't have any sort of like sense of context or anything like that. I don't know what is all involved in terms of like doing storyboarding for films or television or anything like that. So for me, it's like I can't speak in any sort of sense of authority. It's like how long it takes, how much manpower is involved in the process. Like I just plain don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, one thing that sort of kind of sets this apart from to where I'm not coming at this at an angle to where I'm thinking like this is just totally, ruining the industry in a sense. And I am coming to this from thinking about how to really properly define it. Because one thing that's important to distinguish here is that this doesn't mean that Google gets access to any A24's like content library or data or anything like that at all. So for them, this is strictly about sort of creating the whole infrastructure and sort of like the workflow for A24, essentially, when it comes to projects in the future. The other thing that I think is also important as well, too, with this is that I think there has to be a distinction made between talking about generative AI and machine learning AI,
Mm,
which machine learning is very different in terms of like it is more or less that you're curating a a computer for the much like a computerized mind, and you're kind of feeding it specific type of information. You're kind of feeding it like stuff that is actually curated and is supposed to help it learn almost the same way like a human mind does. Or if you're a young kid and you start learning things from books, from teachers, from stuff like that, it's like it's all more specific information. It's not copying itself from other like types of works or other different people's like actual work essentially there. So it's
yeah.
acting more autonomously from data processing and becoming accurate over time. Because the deep dive that I did with this is that applications like that do exist already with storyboarding. There's already stuff like Copycat, there's like Topaz, there's DaVinci Resolve, there's Lightroom.
Hmm.
There's stuff like that utilizes machine learning that is supposed to streamline the process a bit more, that is supposed to help storyboarders with kind of cutting out all of that tedious workflow of having to do all this editing, having to do all this like trial and error when it comes to storyboarding.
Yeah.
And I feel when it comes to sort of explaining that and kind of creating that distinction with it, with DeepMind, with Google's DeepMind, I don't know like what sort of side of this it falls, but I think if they were a little bit more clear as to like what aspect they're kind of entertaining with this whole partnership, I think that would help people understand it a bit better to where this isn't like Gen AI where it's like, okay, draw me a picture of a dog, or hey, go ahead and draw me a picture of a pyramid, and it ends up being, I don't know, something like exact from like a movie like the pyramid from the Mummy or something like that.
Yeah.
It's more where it's like the machine just through its processing, it's just learning itself, or it's taking all analytical data and historical data and making something of it. So I don't know. I think for this one, it should be more of a wait and see kind of perspective. I'm not ready to just say, hey, guess what, A24, I'm not going to watch your movies anymore. Or I'm not going to support you anymore. I
Mm.
want to see at what level they can be transparent with something like this.
See,
Uh,
I'm ready to say A24. I'm not now. I'm kidding. You were saying them with this, or sorry?
no, I mean, yeah, for me, it's like I'm not ready to make that, but I don't think anybody is stupid for doing so. Like, I think depending on where you fall on this whole, discourse of AI and stuff like that, you can make that decision of not wanting to sort of patronize any industry or any company or whatever if they go that route. So seeing a lot of people kind of have that reaction about like, oh well, this means this is the death of A24. I understand. Like I get that whole perspective of like this does seem like a slap in the face to all those people that loved a lot of the work that they already did. But considering how much this is getting put into different studios and all that stuff. I mean, we already talked about the whole Martin Scorsese thing.
Mhm.
I just kind of want to see where this goes and kind of start drawing conclusions from that. If I start noticing, oh yeah, they're going whole hog with all this stuff, and it's people are losing their jobs by the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, and movies just end up being just terrible, just AI slop, then okay, then that is the consequence of using a technology like this that is diluting the industry, and that is essentially the death of creativity.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're there yet. I think we still need to see if the kinks can be worked out. But I talked at length about this. What about you, Damien? What's your thoughts?
I think that as long as I think that as long as it stays in the realm of a tool and not a takeover,
Mhm.
I mean, I say I'm okay with this, but again, it's not my job that's on the line. I don't know how this affects Hollywood specifically in terms of like, planning for the movies, all the aspects that come along with that. Basically, all the parts that this is going to be helping with, primarily storyboarding, which is the big thing. I don't know how taxing and grueling that process is. Never had to do it, but from what I gather, I would assume if there was a way to be able to storyboard faster and have really good details and with some of these applications to be able to specify, oh, but I want a wide shot,
Mhm.
and it just does it. I mean, that's why wouldn't you want that? Ask anybody that is still back in the day that's like, what's this CGI? No, we're going to stick to 100% practical effects all day, every single movie for the rest of our lives. It's admirable, but you kind of have to change and to adapt with the times. And I'll tell you what, right now I still feel like that generative AI is more appealing to influencers and well, not even, I guess you could say small productions as well, but like small independent creators, maybe like myself here, where I like to, dabble in some creative ventures here and there. Something like that might have its appeal to me because I'm doing like maybe cool thing. Hey, doesn't this look cool? But I'm not putting full on, movie production saying create me a character and another character and they're having a discussion about this, but make it in the style of a Tarantino dialogue and, make the movie about a heist or something. And then bam, push enter, and then a movie's made. Like I don't, I'm not going to say that we're never going to get there. We potentially could get there with as fast as technology moves, maybe in the next 20 years, maybe hell, maybe even in the next 10 years. But the question remains, will people want to view it, or does it take
Mhm.
away from the value of it? Like, you could buy a painting. There's a reason you would buy a painting from a famous painter, uh, or artist that put their heart and soul into something, because at that point you're not just buying the work of art, you're buying the work that was associated with it. With AI, to just do this for me, push enter, here you go. I mean, that's just it's just a copy in that sense. Like, it takes away from the value from it. So I don't know. It's tough to say if there's going to be an acceptance to this. I'll tell you what, if we end up in the point though where you have a performance from an AI generated actress, like if we were to find out tomorrow, like let's just say A24 comes out and they say, hey, that movie Obsession that did so well, so that girl, that actress doesn't exist, she's 100% AI generated, then we're in trouble.
Yeah,
Because
totally.
I haven't seen the movie, I'm going to see it, but I've seen clips and she does a great job in that role. We're in trouble if this movie does that on that budget. And that's probably why the budget was so low. It's because they didn't have to pay the actors that much, or in this case, or at all. um we're in trouble. I don't think we're there yet. i think we're still I think we're still at the phase where it's a novelty. It's like, hey guys, you want to see what it looks like if Terminator fights Predator? Enter. And it looks pretty cool. It's a fun little 2-minute watch or 30-second watch or 1-minute watch. But do you really want to see a full length feature of that? You will get the actions, the people, but you won't get the soul. I don't know. That's just my take on it. But we'll probably see more as this continues to develop. But speaking of souls, from a horror aspect, Evil Dead Burn is going to be coming out next weekend, this weekend, depending on when we release this episode. But nonetheless, the point I'm trying to say is, when it comes out, and it's soon, I will be seeing that. I will be going to the drive-in to see that movie, and I will be taking my dog with me. You're gonna have to toughen up, Faith. I'm sorry, you're coming with us because I'm not missing this movie. She's been healing great, so I think she'll be fine. It's not like we're gonna run her at the track or anything like that. She'll be lying down in the truck, so she'll be good to go. I'm excited to see that movie. Can't wait to see that movie. I'm also just I feel as a horror fan, I'm getting spoiled here because not only are we getting a new Evil Dead film, Burn, coming out this month, next week, in fact, or this week, depending. Um, we're also it already got announced that a follow up to that is going to be in development, or is I believe actually has already finished filming, if I'm not mistaken, and it's going to be a movie called Evil Dead Wrath. And this movie is going to be taking place in 1972, which is, I believe, like a full decade before the first Evil Dead with Sam Raimi's Evil Dead with starring Bruce Campbell came out. So this is going to be the earliest iteration of this, and I believe is tied to the world, to the lore. Um, as I understand it, of course, that could change. You never know, but as I understand it, it is going to be tied to the timeline, and it's going to be the earliest one now set in 1972, which they've also talked about going back to that raw type of footage in terms of the cinematography of this, which also has my attention. The question is going back to and developing more of the lore more appealing than another iteration, or more appealing than another addition to the sequel moving forward, something that maybe even connects them in the next film? I don't know. What do you think, Matthias? Are you more interested in does the idea of a prequel excite you, or would the idea of a continuation of another story excite you?
Both. Next question. But
Skittles, just for breakfast? No, I'm kidding.
just for breakfast. But no, I mean, hearing this news specifically about Evil Dead Wrath, about how it is almost a decade back from the original, Sam Raimi film. I'm interested in something like this because we really don't know anything about what happens before Ash. I mean, we do. We understand very little about what happens, before the events of Ash and his friends go into the cabin. What we know, at least from like the established lore already, is we know about Professor Raymond Noby, and we know about his wife Henrietta, who owned the cabin and retreated there to do translations of the Necronomicon Ex Mortis. But as far as like how far away that is from the events of the first Evil Dead film, it's about like a month, maybe 2 months before. So it's not even like really in the same sort of line as what Evil Dead Wrath will be. It's like that's going to be a full decade, before all that has happened. So as far as what possibilities are in there, what story or what kind of lore they can expand upon that, I think a lot of that is going to be about where exactly they find this iteration of the Necronomicon, or going back into the whole aspect of like studying demonology and doing all of that kind of like experimentation with that. Even like with the remake of Evil Dead that they had in 2013 as well too. It's like you have that sort of that scene as well too that starts off the film where you have that father presumably in that cabin and all that stuff, kind of going in the same sort of vein as like the first Evil Dead film there, but almost like telling a backstory of that specific timeline or whatever. So seeing that attributed to, Sam Raimi's universe or whatever could be very interesting. I always appreciated a lot of like what Sam Raimi does with his first film, in that it feels like a student film. It feels very personal in that regard. But going even further back to like 1970s version of filmmaking, that sort of like very grindhouse kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Evil Dead is a perfect vehicle for that type of framing and that type of directing style. So I'm very excited for this. I do love what they're doing with Evil Dead now in terms of like having it set in modern times and going and each having its own little special flair or whatever to kind of really work with it.
Yeah.
But there is a special place in my heart for going back to that, 1970s, 1980s golden age of horror for me, and just kind of making things there. So I think I'm much more excited about Wrath. I'm still going to most likely love Evil Dead Burn, and I'm also going to see it, the first opening week as well too.
Mm-hmm.
But Wrath is one of those who were like, man, I can't wait for this one to come next year. So, and I can't wait to see something about it because yeah, if it's in 1972 and they're going back to that style, I'm there for it.
Yeah, and it's gonna, like I was saying before, the director is I'm not sure how to say his last name. It's Francis Gallopy, I believe, who did work on it's going to be written and directed by Francis Gallopy, and who their work was The Last Stop in Yuma County, which is which is the project that earned this opportunity. So that said, I need to go back and check that out because I don't really know. I didn't really take the time to research anything about that, but I will
Same.
certainly do so after. Um, Regarding his take on this and the decision to go into the 1970s, um, is a bold move, I think, because not only are you predating the original, but it also kind of puts a little bit of pressure on you. Because as we've seen now, and we can kind of go through this and see if I can get this off the top of my head. The first remake that did came out, which was I think 2013,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, The Evil Dead, right around the same as Man of Steel. Go figure. But 2013 Evil Dead came out. And I remember when that one came out, I was like, man, this one looks good. Like it was the first type of horror film that I saw that in a while that was like, man, this one looks creepy, especially with the one in the basement or in the cellar, I guess. That one was crazy. And that was directed by Fede Alvarez. And then you get Lee Cronin, I don't know, almost like 10 years later, which was kind of crazy for them to come up with this decision to just, hey, you know what, let's do Evil Dead Rise. And Evil Dead had been one of my favorite horror films. It's my wife and I, it's one of our favorite ones to turn on. Like we're going to start grilling or something. Hey, let's put on Evil Dead, and Evil Dead Rise as well. It was to the point where I'm like, man, I don't know which one I like more because Evil Dead Rise was just so well done. The atmosphere that they were able to create in that apartment building just added to that suffocating feeling of just feeling trapped and where do you go. And then now we get Evil Dead Burn, and which is going to be I forget his first name, but last name Vanacek, who's going to be taking the torch. And from what I can tell from the trailers, this looks pretty good. This looks like a really good film. Now you're going to pass the torch again to a new director who's taking this back to the 70s. And not only does it put pressure on you, especially if Burn comes out and is another huge success, you want to be able to, not drop it, not drop the ball. But also you're going back to a time that predates the original, which may lend itself to a little bit more criticism, especially from those that are just purists and love the originals, which again, albeit they were good for their time, they don't hold up as well nowadays. And I know that's a tough thing to say because I know a lot of people really like, the character of Ash. But in my opinion, this series has kind of outgrown Ash, even though he did have that, at the end of the credits of the Evil Dead, he did have that special appearance at the end that ended up not going anywhere. But I'm kind of glad that it didn't. I love Bruce Campbell's contributions to this, and he walked so these could run basically. But I feel like this series of films has outgrown that type of character or that type of character, I'll say. I don't know. What about you, Matthias? Am I saying something horrible, or do you kind of like agree, or you could take it or leave it?
Yeah, so for me, I've always enjoyed the first Evil Dead. Whenever they did Evil Dead 2, I still I still like it as a movie, but it leaned into sort of that horror comedy campiness that I really didn't like too much.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Army of Darkness, it kind of lended itself to a lot of that, where it's just like very campy, goofy, and all that stuff. And there's an audience for it, but it's just I'm not really that. Um, and then after Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead, then you had Ash versus the Evil Dead, that a series that they did on Showtime, I think.
Yeah.
And I like the series. I know it expanded more on like Ash's character and all that stuff, and kind of revisiting him, after so many years without him, in the Evil Dead universe. But I think there is something to be said that as much as he is an icon with it, I think it sort of kind of going back and kind of focusing more on, the demons and the Necronomicon and all that stuff. I think that is really what's helping this franchise continue and thrive, because you could do so much with the Necronomicon and the concept of Evil Dead than
Mhm.
you can do with Ash as a character in it. Like trying to imagine Ash in every single, Evil Dead film that they've done so far, I just don't see how he really fits into that. And, I love Bruce Campbell. He's a fantastic guy. And he, is very great in terms of like the fan interactions that I've heard people had with
For
him.
sure.
He very
For
much
sure.
loves the fans and he loves this franchise and he loves Sam Raimi. But yeah, I think it's gone to where a lot of these films are doing just fine, like really without him. And that's not to knock him. It's just that the stories and the sort of freedom that they have with it just work a lot better in that context there. And he still loves the franchise too. I mean, he with a lot of these, he either comes on as a producer or an executive producer or whatever, or he's just
Mhm.
kind of there to just like hype up the film to the fans and be like, "Hey, I'm not in this, but check it out. It's still part of like my franchise." So I think for me, it's like, yeah, I'm liking the direction that they're going with this. I hope that they still stick with that. As far as like what lore direction they go with Wrath, I think it will be contentious. I think there's some people that are really going to hold on to, well, this didn't happen because, Sam Raimi said this, or hey, this happened in the comics, so this doesn't make any sense, or hey,
Yeah.
technically, Army of Darkness is like the first Evil Dead film, or at least the first sort of like lore driven film, in the franchise, so it doesn't make sense. People will make up anything to kind of complain about it. But for me, I'm excited for it. I'm ready to see like what they have. But yeah, it is putting a lot of pressure on this new director to really kind of show up and see what he could do with this lore, if he's wanted to sort of go in a different direction entirely, or if he's just going to add to the lore that Sam Raimi wanted to establish, or maybe Sam Raimi's giving him notes to sort of expand upon. So who knows? We're a year out, so I'm pretty sure we'll hear something about this probably maybe towards the end of this year, if I had to guess.
Yeah. And here's a question. Do you bring back previous directors to do another version, or do you just keep this trend going of hiring a new director with a new vision on a regular basis? And also, if you do bring back a previous director to work on the next installment, do they work on something that's going to connect to directly to their story that they told, or do they tell a brand new story? We've already seen Lee Cronin. The reason I ask this is we saw Lee Cronin's The Mummy, which was loosely tied to the story with the Necronomicon, I believe, which was a great film as well. I enjoyed that one actually quite a bit, but it made me wonder: do you bring them back to do another one? Does Fede Alvarez come back and just do another installment? Is it a continuation of the previous story, or does he tell something new? I don't know. What do you think about that, Matthias?
I mean, I always held the opinion of whenever I saw Lee Cronin's The Mummy, I felt, man, this doesn't really work as like a mummy movie, but this would be a really killer Evil Dead film. And I really feel like it does feel like a repurposed Evil Dead film. So a lot of the concepts, a lot of like what Lee Cronin does with the Mummy in terms of kind of the sort of focus on it being almost like a more of a possession film rather than like a straight up like Mummy's Curse kind of aspect to it. It's like, man, it's like a lot of these, kill scenes or like these like spooky moments would work really, really well if this was an actual Evil Dead film that he was continuing on. And I think the early concepts of it probably was like, hey, if they call me back after the success of Evil Dead Rise, like this is the next Evil Dead film I want to do. So he probably started, concepting and, all that stuff for it. But then, they told him, hey, unfortunately, it's not going to be you. But he probably just had so much to work with that he was like, okay, well, I can repurpose it into this mummy movie. Um, I would have loved to see, I think, a continuation. I would have, I think, been delighted if he was actually tapped on to direct Burn, because I think he would have honestly connected the story of Rise with that, or at least have it be a follow up. Um, as far as the direction they're doing now, where it's like it's a new director for each one,
Mhm.
I like that. I think for
Yeah.
that gives it a little bit of more flavor, so that there's not so much pressure in having to sort of like do follow ups and kind of say like, hey, this is the exact same tone you have to hit this with. You have to have the same story beats. You have to have this and this and this. I think it's more freeing to kind of just say, hey, your concept for this is it's Evil Dead. There has to be an Necronomicon. There has to be Deadites. There has to be crazy kills and a whole bunch of gore. But as far as the story, characters, settings, you do you. And I think that is more conceptually brilliant and creatively brilliant than having to focus on, okay, well, it has to follow this lore, this narrative, and all that stuff. So for me, it's like, yeah, just keep at it with what you're doing right now, with everybody kind of doing a different like take on it, instead of having to sort of like have people come back or having to sort of like follow up with what they did already. So I think it's better this way that they're doing it so far.
Yeah, I think so too. I like the idea of that. I would be interested if they brought back Lee Cronin specifically and he was going to do a continuation of his story. I wouldn't mind seeing maybe something if you could bring back that character of maybe not the aunt, but the youngest daughter, because by this point she's probably a little bit older. I don't know what kind of story you would involve her in, or if this would continue on, you know, going after her, or you would bring her in as somebody who has knowledge of what the new person is facing and is now the person that's going to help in that sense. I don't know how much older she is now, but or by the time an idea like that will come to fruition. But that's one idea to kind of throw out there. But yeah, so I guess as more information develops on that, we'll be sure to report it. But that said, that's going to bring us to our last topic here. And our last topic is a little depressing, and I gotta admit that I really missed the mark on this one. I went into this thinking that Supergirl was gonna potentially do the same, if not even more than Superman. I was dead wrong, folks. Dead wrong. It stumbled out the gate horribly bad. And it really has killed the franchise's momentum. The DCU, it's kind of stalled their momentum. I'm not saying, you know, raise the alarm, it's all over, James Gunn is out, they're bringing somebody else in. No, not at all. You're not going to base the success of this off of one film, you know, stumbling a little bit, but you are going to go back, I would assume, and start analyzing what can we fix, what can we adjust to move forward for the next ones, because we also have Clayface coming out in October. And I feel like if that one works out well, which I have a feeling that it is, because one of the reasons that this Supergirl film didn't work out too well, and Matthias, you've seen this one as well, I haven't yet, but what I've heard is that the script just was not good. Some of the development of these characters were not very well. Specifically, I believe is it Krem, I think, is the character. Some criticisms on his performance. Millie Alcock was a good performer, but she didn't really have much to work with in terms of the stories. What I'm told, or is what I've heard. I say is what I've been told by executive producers that were attached to this film. James Gunn calls me on a regular basis to get my opinion. So it really comes down to, I think, the script. And one of the other things that I've heard, which is because we're just gonna full disclosure, we're gonna kind of go like all over the place with this. No spoilers, but especially because I haven't seen it yet. But it's kind of just a combination of things. Number one, the script, for sure. It didn't really work out too well. The director, from what I understand, didn't even really read the source material and actually just got the shots needed or whatever from the script itself. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
No. And the other thing that is a little disheartening is that James Gunn himself stated quality matters, that nothing would get approved, nothing would move forward until it had a solid script, which is why I was very confident in this project going forward. And I just had a feeling back then that, you know, when I had said that, oh yeah, this one's going to do great, it could potentially do this much, I just timed that with also the increase in the attendance at the movies. So I really thought that there was going to be more of an audience for this now than there was last year. And I was wrong, or I was kind of right. but the audience didn't go see Supergirl. They went to continue to go see Toy Story 5, which in its second weekend, I think, still did double what Supergirl did in its premiere, which I think the weekend premiere domestic did like 38 or so. It's a little troubling. And I mentioned script in terms of the being the problem. And the reason I'm not too worried about I was gonna say Scarface. The reason I'm not too worried about Clayface is because the script was actually written by, or at least the first portion of it or something along those lines was actually written by Mike Flanagan, excellent scriptwriter. I'm not worried about him. Tried and true and tested, and he has an amazing filmography to support him. Ana Noguera does not. And that's why this was going to be a huge gamble that I was like, hey, you know what? In Gunn, we trust. He trusts her. He said nothing, no script is going to get approved or move forward until, it's 100% quality. I think this is going to be a great film. The marketing wasn't that great. I wasn't too crazy about the trailer. I was honest about that in previous episodes where I was just like, this first trailer didn't do it. If I'm being completely honest, none of the trailers really did a great job, but they got better as time went on. But like I said before, a movie can be great and the trailer sucks, or the trailer can be amazing and the movie sucks. So I don't know. Maybe this one kind of fell in the middle. But Matthias, you actually saw this movie. Is anything of what I said verified with your viewing?
Yeah. I think for me, no, I really wanted to like this movie. Like, damn it, I tried at every sort of turn to really trying to find like a silver lining with this. And here's the thing. It's nothing with anybody's performances, I feel. Like, Millie Alcock as Supergirl, fantastic. I 100% buy her as that. Jason Momoa as Lobo, 100% buy him as that. Even the secondary character of Ruthie as well too. I buy her performance in this movie 100%.
Mm-hmm.
What this movie really, really needed is it needed some color, like how Tom King's, Woman of Tomorrow looks, the actual, graphic novel this is based off. That is a beautiful, beautiful showcase of art. And one of my favorite, like, best looking, like, graphic novels really of all time in my mind. None of that color palette is in this movie at all. Like, there's a lot of good colors in the start of it, but then it kind of goes down the whole like, well, we got to make all these fight scenes look more, like dark with high contrast, and like everything is like a shade of gray or brown, and it just looks ugly. And God, the writing, the script is this movie's biggest killer because it's so generic, it's cliche, it's substandard. It just doesn't work. As much as it tries to sort of like kind of be a little bit elevated, especially in moments of high drama, it just doesn't perform well. And I think that's the biggest thing with this one is that James Gunn took a really big leap in trying to trust, Craig Gillespie and Ana Noguera with, the writing and then the filming. Those just weren't the people to trust. Because whenever you have, director saying, hey, I didn't even look at the source material, and the writer who I think her previous work was Birds of Prey, and I think The Flash as well too.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. So she's tapped to do Wonder Woman. I don't. Like, I'm sorry. It's just, please. It's like, just don't let that happen. And man, having this show in the same week as Toy Story 5 and then to have to follow up the next weekend with Minions and Monsters, like, it was just given a really bad window. But I mean, there wasn't a good window for this at all, because then after that is Spider-Man Brand New Day, and there's just no way to compete with that at all. So I think this was a perfect storm of just stuff just didn't work out. I hope it doesn't turn them off to having Supergirl. I mean, I think she's supposed to be in Man of Tomorrow. Like, I think that's almost guaranteed. But I hope it doesn't just give them the wrong message of like, hey, female-led film, superhero films, don't work. I think that's not the case. I think you just really need to trust in everybody else, and you need to have a solid writer and a solid director who reads the damn source material. Because if they had followed the source material, or if Gunn even directed and I think wrote this, we would be having a very different conversation. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's part of the problem though too. Well, it's like a couple of things that you had mentioned too with, like you were saying, like female led superhero films. It's right up there with the same concept of people saying, you know, the superhero movie fatigue. It's not that there's superhero movie fatigue, and it's not that a superhero movie led by a woman can't succeed either. It's just at the end of the day, you need the stars to align. You could have had, you know, hell, look at The Flash. The Flash was a male-led movie, and that didn't do too great. It was actually a pretty good movie. It didn't do too great. Morbius, Kraven the Hunter. You know, these are all movies that male-led heroes, I guess you could say, or anti-heroes or whatever, and they just didn't work. The thing that worked for the other films was you just had a good movie. Bottom line, that's what it comes down to. Script, directing, all that stuff, all the elements that came together to make that movie work were not present here. Now, if you had that and the actress, the let's say Millie Alcock came in this and just, you know, sucked, then that would be a different story in terms of her performance individually. Not saying that, you see, that's why a female-led, you know, superhero movie doesn't work. It's not that. I mean, Wonder Woman itself is a statement to that. With Gal Gadot, Gal Gadot, no less. You know, like, who isn't really that strong of an actress, but Wonder Woman was a great movie. That was the movie that restored hope in that portion of the DCEU. And then after that, unfortunately, things didn't continue to get better, but it is what it is. So I don't know. I think that one of the things is he definitely needs to check on this in terms of whether or not they're going to continue with this screenwriter for Wonder Woman. I think you kind of need to either change direction, or I don't know. I don't know what the mark is. I mean, it's like James Gunn coming in to review the script and everything and provide notes and all that is one thing, but it's still based off of him. You know, it's like, at what level are we considering James Gunn the best screenwriter ever? You know what I mean? Like, he could still come in, make some changes, and it still just doesn't work. But if he has to come in and write the whole thing, then he needs to make a choice. Is he going to be the CEO of DC Studios, or is he going to be creating and directing all of these movies himself? Because Superman was a success, 125 million domestic opening. Supergirl was not, 37.1 million domestic opening. At what point are you the CEO, and at what point are you the creator? Because he's gonna have to make that choice. And this was part of the reason that this was another thing of my concern, was really leaning heavy into the Superman portion of the launch. All things super, like Superman, Supergirl, Superman, Man of Tomorrow, coming up, you know, next year, which I'm not saying that that's going to be bad. I mean, again, it's going to be James Gunn, but again, I wasn't that impressed with Superman, and that was written and directed by James Gunn. I mean, I'm not saying that I represent the majority, clearly not, but I'm just saying you're going to need to get some experienced writers in there to be able to make this work, and directors as well. I'd be curious to see if he would ever be willing to get two things. Number one, I don't think this early. I wonder if he would ever be open to having Zack Snyder come back and direct a film. And number two, I wonder if he'd ever be open to having Jon Favreau come in and direct a film. I'd be really interested to see what Jon Favreau does and what superhero or movie he would want to work with. But I'd also be curious to see what a Zack Snyder film would be in the DCU, because I feel like that's something that I don't know if that would be a great thing or a bad thing. And again, it depends on the script, because Zack Snyder's not a great script writer either. But you pair him up with somebody and he can just concentrate on visuals and do a story like that. I don't know. Maybe he comes in and directs a Flash movie when they finally introduce that. Who knows? But I would be very interested to see what if Jon Favreau, like, I feel like they need to get some directors that understand the source material. Because if you're not understanding the source material and basing it off of that, you've got to be able to adapt. Like, don't get me wrong, take creative liberties, but the category of the best adapted screenplay is in the Oscars for a reason, because it's a talent to be able to do that and put it on screen. So I don't know. It's a little disheartening. I'm not saying raise the alerts and everything right now, because again, we're only the second movie in. But at the same time, for your second movie in with the reputation that the DCEU had that are still trying to shake off, and you come out and your second film isn't great, what do we have left? We have two more. We have the Lantern series, and we have Superman or Man of Tomorrow. And that's pretty much it for now. I mean, yeah, we got that Themyscira prequel series that is just got writers, which again, now I'm hoping they're really good. And then eventually we're going to have a Wonder Woman movie that is apparently having the same screenwriter that put out this. I don't know. Lanterns looks good, but again, Creature Commandos was good. Lanterns is good. Peacemaker was pretty good. So you've got series that are pretty good, and you've got your cinematic world that is maybe an average of a 3 when it needs to be a 4 or higher. You need to make a mark. Like, the movie didn't need to be a huge box office success, but it needed to be a good movie. It could be good, maybe not do that great in the box office, but if it's good, people will talk about it and it'll just carry over. But it was a bad movie, apparently. Where do you go from there? I don't know. Last thoughts on that, Matthias?
I mean, where you go from here is that you start prioritizing trying to bring like the mainline like heroes of the DC universe in the fold. I think I think having the odd sort of random hero or villain or whatever movie is fine. So I think Clayface is going to do really well. I trust Mike Flanagan, and I trust everything about that film in terms of direction and the feel. So I think that one is going to give a little bit of hope until Man of Tomorrow. But you just got to get those priorities straight. It's like you got to start bringing in mainline people. It's like Wonder Woman, is in the pipeline. That's good. Change the screenwriter, please. But you need to bring in, Batman at some point soon. You need to have, maybe focus on a Lantern film as well too. I know we have the series, of course, on HBO, but start kind of expanding upon, the Jon Stewart Green Lantern storyline as well too. Just start really prioritizing all those things and start kind of really thinking about, hey, we need to start this whole project like from the ground up with people that we can trust in terms of screenwriting and directing that aren't bothering to actually look at the source material. Because that's the thing that James Gunn excels at, is understanding the source material and appreciating it. If you don't have anybody who's on his level or who doesn't get that really, then I'm sorry, they're not supposed to be helming any of these projects. If they're just unwilling to do so or given the note not to do it, it's like, no. It's like, read the damn comics, watch an animated series or two, get those notes down, and then from there build your own way after that. So that's all I think about that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that this is an isolated incident, and like we said, we've got Clayface coming out next. Now, if that one sucks, I'm gonna say that they need to reassess and see where they're going with this. That said, I feel pretty strongly that it's not, and I know that I just got through saying that a trailer could be great and the movie sucks, but I'm gonna say that the first teaser trailer that we got for Clayface was better than any of the trailers that I saw for Supergirl overall. I was like, yeah, this is good. I like this. I like where this is going. It had my interest. The Supergirl trailers didn't really have my interest. I wanted to, and I was really basing this could do better off of the momentum that we were seeing from people returning back to the theaters. I was like, yeah, this is great. It's a superhero film. It looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be the biggest box office, but just has to be a good movie. James Gunn says everything's going to have his stamp of approval before it moves forward. So I have confidence in that. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm more excited for other films right now than I am in the next DCU film. Like I said, I don't understand why we are concentrating so much on Superman. Domestically, he does fairly well. Globally, not as much. There isn't as much global interest in Superman. So I can understand why you want to launch with it. And maybe, like I said, even with Supergirl, sure. But now your third movie in the entry is another Superman movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are people going to have to shake off the bitter taste of Supergirl? They're going to go into Superman hoping that it's good. Even though I know James Gunn didn't direct Supergirl himself, it's still attached. I feel like a movie in between that, not a series, not Lanterns, a movie in between that could build to something might help. I'm not saying that they have to copy the Marvel thing where, hey, you know what? The idea of Samuel L. Jackson coming out at the end of the movie saying, hey, I'm working on something, an initiative, the Avengers, and then it led to the next thing and the next trailer. Like, I could understand why you don't have to emulate that, but I feel like the audiences need that extra pull to know that they're building towards something. I mean, I think, again, they're playing the long game. You know, they've got time. This is the second movie, so I get it. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like you need to give us something in those post credits to get us excited and get us talking, because that's what was happening in the MCU. It was exciting to see that. Who's that purple guy? You know, Google search was probably blown up during that time. Like, who's the purple guy? You know, like Grimace, you know, or something. But it was good because then it led into the next movie and you wanted to see how it connected. Now I understand that that thing could also be a downfall because then everybody just wants movies to always be connected. But that's also why you can have DC can do an Elseworlds movie and not worry about it. So with this being the DCU, I feel like, you know what, lean into it. You've already proven that you can do Elseworlds movies with like movies like Joker and what else? The Batman, Matt Reeves universe, you know, you can do separate films and people don't go into it thinking, well, how does this connect? But if you're going to play in the DCU sandbox, you got to start kind of connecting some of these things for people to be that much more motivated to go into the next one. Because Supergirl coming out at the end of Superman was a nice touch. And it probably generated some interest of seeing what she was going to be like. Unfortunately, she just didn't have much to work with. And hopefully that gets adjusted in the future. But as we often say on this show, time will tell. But all right, folks, and just like that, our time is up. But as always, we want to thank you all for listening to us, whether it be on your day off or your commute to work. We appreciate you taking the time to hit download or push play on your device. We also want to remind you, if you're not already, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, as well as YouTube at Second Way to Kill a Werewolf, where we encourage you to share your thoughts and opinions on the many, many posts that we put up. Also, if you enjoyed this show, please be sure to share it with a friend. Hit like and subscribe because it really does help us out more than you could ever know. That said, I'm Damien.
And I'm Matthias.
And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.